Okay, so this is now, I discovered what was going wrong. What was going completely wrong with the camera was that when I was long pressing the record button, the SJ cam has a feature where it starts to rebalance the sensor or something like that. So that's why the entire footage was ruined on my ride yesterday, but that's alright. I've got a haircut since then, so it's going to look even better today, although it is a little overcast, so I don't know what it's going to be like when I head out. It might start raining, I might have to come back and take another shower, but that's alright. It's a beautiful day, it'll be cool, hopefully. So let's try this camera out, and this time I want to get the angle right of the mount. I don't know whether I'll have time. I'm trying two cameras today. I don't know whether I'll have the time to be able to mount both of them, and also I'm going to be using the lapel mic today, so let's see if all of this turns out fine. No, fingers crossed, not victory. Yeah, hopefully victory at the end, but fingers crossed right now. And let's see if this ride goes well. If it does, I'll be editing this, and when I snap my fingers, I'll be elsewhere. Okay, both cameras are recording. There's a camera here, there's a camera on my helmet. I've got my gloves. This is my first series. I hope the mic is recording. I just hope the mic doesn't fall out of place. So I'm firing up the Africa Twin. The monsoon is about to hit Bombay. I think it's already hit close to Bombay, or it's rained a couple of times. There was a cyclone, of course, pre-monsoon. So before things get really serious, I wanted to do something regarding putting some content out for Biker Babble. And Shane and I have been doing the chats for a while, but we haven't had any content of any motorcycle being ridden, etc. So I said, okay, let me try and do this, and I got a whole bunch of equipment. You can see this is basically the GoPro handlebar mount, and I thought I'd mount it here on the motorcycle, but it doesn't wrap around this thick bar. I guess it's meant for bicycles, but thankfully I could put it on my rear view mirror's handlebar or handle. And now we are off on the Africa Twin, which I bought about just under 2 years ago. And when I bought it, there were lots of bikes to consider, but let's set off. Here we are, there we go. All right, let's see whether we're able to get good audio throughout this. That's really the main thing. I think video, I've already seen that you can get video. Unfortunately, the other day I had tried the SJ cam after a while, and if you long press the record button, it goes into some kind of sensor mode or something. So the entire footage was really dark and really unusable. So here I am again, attempting it one more time. This auto doesn't want to give way. Okay, let me put it on auto mode. That's the best part about the Africa Twin. If you don't want to, you don't have to change gears. Just put it in auto mode. And sometimes getting in and out of the city is really useful in that mode, because you don't want to be changing gears and stuff like that in traffic and in little lanes and stuff, unless it's a small bike. And this is really meant for long journeys and going to trails far away where you can ride in conditions that are difficult for other motorcycles and definitely for cars. So the Africa Twin, and I was talking about choosing the Africa Twin over the Tiger. I'd actually booked a Tiger 800 in 2018, and then I decided to, the Africa Twin launched. I used to own a Versys 650, and I wanted to upgrade, and the Africa Twin launched, and I was having so much fun on motorcycles that I decided to upgrade very quickly, 6 months after owning the Versys. And so okay, you know what, I need to take a clap. If I don't take a clap, I'm going to have problems syncing the audio. That's something I didn't think of, despite being in production for so many years. So here goes. Maybe I can see it. Here it goes. Clap. Clap. Okay. Now we should have a clap that I can sync to. The rest of the audio. The rear view feels a little bit like it's not got the right amount of tire pressure. So anyway, so I got the Africa Twin. I tested the Africa Twin when I was about to get the Tiger. I had booked the Tiger and I was about to get the Tiger, but the Africa Twin released and I test rode it, and I kind of painfully deliberated over the decision about whether to go for a Tiger or an Africa Twin. And there were lots of reasons that I chose the Africa Twin. I think, and I'll be honest about this, I think one of the reasons definitely was that it was a bigger bike. It was 1000cc and the Tiger was 800cc. I know that's not exactly the most intelligent way to think, especially if you're a biker. It doesn't matter what the cc of a bike is. I really enjoyed my 390 Duke quite a lot, despite the fact that it was half the, or less than half the capacity of the Africa Twin, because different conditions and different kinds of riding need different kinds of engines. It doesn't always have to be a 2-liter engine, and a 2-liter engine won't necessarily be better than a 1-liter engine. But anyway, that was one of the things in my mind at the time. The other thing was that it was a Honda, and I'd heard really good things about Honda maintenance and reliability. So I have a friend called Samir, and he told me about either his VFR or something, or like a super sport bike from Honda, maybe the Fireblade, I'm not really sure, which he rode for some 70,000 kilometers or something like that, which, as you might know, is a lot for a super bike. And then he decided to blow the engine out or something, and apparently Honda just replaced the engine without charging him, something like that. So these are urban legends. I'm not really sure that they'll do that. I'm sure they'll be charging you for whatever pieces of equipment have to be replaced or repaired, but these are the urban legends that I believed. Well, actually it was a friend of mine, so, and he's a fairly big bike enthusiast, so I believed the story when I heard it, and it was really heartening to hear that that kind of support existed for super bikes. Otherwise I'd been hearing horror stories, and by the way, this is all hearsay, so don't take my word for it, but when you go out shopping for a super bike, you will hear this in the various forums anyway, is that the first bike I was considering buying, because that's the first super bike showroom that I saw, was a Ducati. And problem was, I heard lots of whining about Ducati's maintenance and servicing from various sources. So I decided not to buy a Ducati, but also that it ran pretty hot, and the Multistrada is not exactly great in the city. When you're buying your first bike, you really don't know what you want, so that always becomes a big issue. I hope you can hear me and the audio is not too muffled or windy. We'll find out. So in any case, where was I? Yes, so let's go on a little bit of a more aggressive mode. There's 3 modes in Africa Twin: sports, there's drive, there's sports, and there's sports. Sports has 3 modes, 1, 2, 3, and the third one is the most aggressive one. Yeah, I do feel I need to check the tire pressure of the rear tire. Anyway, so oh wow, this camera is really shaking. I'm not sure what kind of footage we'll get from it, but anyway, the one on my helmet seems to be fine. I'm pointing back as well. Probably get a lot of sky, nothing else. Anyway, okay, so I was talking about the sports mode of the Africa Twin and how I chose the Africa Twin. Over the Tiger. And so I checked it out, I rode it, and one of the things that I felt was the Africa Twin ran much less hot than the Tiger did. The Tiger had a lot of hot air that was directed at the legs. In India, that's a huge issue, and based on that and based on the reliability, and then I test rode it, it seemed like a pretty good bike, lots of torque at the bottom end. And like I said, initially when you just start riding, you kind of don't know exactly the kind of riding you want to do. But I've always enjoyed off-road riding. I always knew I wanted an adventure bike, something that can handle the bad roads of India first of all. I do like sports bike as well, but they're so impractical, especially in places where well, there he goes. It's a commuter bike and he's going faster than I am. But never, ever let your ego do your riding for you, because you'll end up in a not such a great place. And that's what I think is important when you're riding, to be very safe in India. Right now I'm talking, my attention is distracted, I'm not really riding with my full attention on the road, so I need to be within my limits of being careful. Okay, I need to fix this camera, I think. Let me find the spot where I can settle down, because it's kind of pointing out and up, and you'll probably be getting only a view of the sky, nothing else. So let's stop for a while and fix this camera. Yeah, let's see. How you doing there, buddy? Yeah, that's much better. I think the wind is pushing the camera back, so it needs to be a little further forward. Oops, cameras. I hope I don't get a ticket. But anyway, so the thing is, this camera is moving back. No matter what I do, need to lean it forward. Anyway, so I was talking about choosing the Africa Twin. Let me finish. I decided to go with the Africa Twin finally, after hearing all the issues with, not issues, but the advantages of reliability, the engineering that Honda bikes have is supposed to be really good. Oh, I think this entire thing is moving back. That may be one of the issues. Yeah, it is. That's what is happening. Alright, okay. So that's not such a great thing. Slipping. Okay. Anyway, so we know that mount isn't that great over there. I don't know if the tread on the tires is less. Anyway, so Africa Twin. Went with the Africa Twin, off-road adventure bike, better reliability apparently, or great reliability. And the one thing that you were compromising on was the weight. It was much heavier than the Tiger. And at about 243 kgs, it wasn't light at all, but it carried its weight lower than the Tiger, because the Tiger was fairly top heavy, and that's what everyone said.
and so it was all right, and I rode it. And I also thought it would be good for me to learn that bikes are not about being heavy and light, and they're more about the balance, and your technique gets better and your skill gets a little bit better and you get a little more confident. Now I'm relatively all right, comfortable on the Africa Twin. I won't say I'm an expert, but I do all right, and I can take U-turns and things like that. So it's not about the weight of the bike alone. Of course it does matter, but so it was weight, overheat, and all the other issues. So I got the Africa Twin. And it was the DCT, and the value I thought was a little bit better because the Tiger's not cheap, it's quite expensive. And in the same range, the Africa Twin was giving you a DCT, and it had a lot of other features and stuff like that. But the DCT was interesting because it makes riding in traffic a breeze, but it's a different experience. I mean, if you compare it to a Tiger or you compare it to any other bike with a clutch, it's great to have as a feature off-road for newbies, because when you're going off-road, stalling is, I believe, the number one reason why a lot of people fall off their bikes when they're off-roading, and this bike doesn't stall. It's an automatic, you put it in the right mode and off you go. And it does really help. It makes anyone who's even a newbie feel fairly confident off-road. I've really enjoyed I wouldn't say I've done very difficult off-road trails on my own, but I have done some very interesting coffee estate trails, for example, and just really bad roads, village roads or mud roads or whatever. And actually I've really enjoyed them thanks to the Africa Twin, because it makes it fairly easy. The other thing is that you can do what I'm doing now with the Africa Twin, is you can put it on Tiptronic mode, or whatever the Honda calls this mode, is that you actually change the gears. They're electronic still, but there's levers on the left side here, and you can change the gears yourself. So kind of like Tiptronic, and that makes it fairly easy to actually enjoy a lot of what the other bikes give you, which is being in control of your gears all the time. The gears don't shift on you when you're going past a corner or a curve, and the gears are in your control always, so you can rev high or low, or use engine braking, etc. So it's not that much of an issue. But the only thing with a DCT is that you don't have a neutral gear, and so very occasionally I find that you end up slipping the clutch as a tool to help you in certain situations, and that aspect of riding is not there. And when I was riding the 390 Duke, I really enjoyed the whole feel of being able to change gear and staying in control, because that's really, I guess, a part of riding pleasure is all about, is that you kind of change the gear, rev match, kind of rev really high, and then the pleasure of riding is partially with that as well. Not only that, of course, but the Africa Twin's great. I mean, it's a beautiful lumbering adventure bike that's very, very capable, and definitely I'm nowhere near the limits of the bike at all, even off-road, on-road, whatever. But it's really comfortable for long journeys. I've done a lot of Bombay to Bangalore, I've gone from Bombay to Ooty and back, and it's really been excellent. If there's one thing that I would say, is that it's not, because it's a kind of I think it's a V-twin or 270-degree twin or something like that, so it's very torquey at the bottom, and that's what you need in a adventure bike, in a what's meant to be at least partially an off-road bike or a dirt bike. You need that torque, and that's what apparently the Tiger 800 didn't have a lot of. But then you realize that you spend about 90% of your time actually on the road and on long highways, commuting between two places, and that's where you need a little bit more I guess what do you call it, little bit more of a rev happy engine that can also do high speeds. So this can do high speeds at low revs, no problem, but the engine's not exactly meant for high revs, high speed, kind of enjoying yourself down a straight line or even through curves. And through the curves, it's got a 21-inch wheel, and its rake and trail is longer than the Tiger's, so therefore it's a little more stable. Not skittish, but it changes direction fine. It's got wide handlebars, so let me show you. You can go through, weave through traffic all right. It's not, it's kind of nimble relatively when you've got space, but in short spaces, obviously it's a big bike with a 21-inch wheel, it's not as nimble. The Tiger also isn't exactly the most nimble of bikes, but it's got the advantage of having a smaller rake and trail, so it does turn a little bit more easily. I don't know if the tire size is different also. So if the tire size is different, obviously that might make a difference. This has got 21 and 18 at the back, by the way, and the Tiger has 17 at the back. So anyway, that was the journey, but it's been 2 years with the Africa Twin, and now the new Africa Twin Adventure Sports is available in India. The best part about that bike is that it has tubeless tires. This one has tube tires, which is better for off-road, etc., but that has spoked wheels and tubeless tires like the GS. And so that's pretty tempting. Plus it's the Adventure Sports model with cornering. Actually, Africa Twin in 2020 now has cornering ABS, lean sensitive traction control. Basically it has an IMU, 6-direction IMU I think they call it, and so that changes the game a little bit because it makes things safer, better. And so that's something that I'd definitely like to have, and so it's tempting to try and upgrade. Plus, the new Africa Twin, despite having a 24-liter tank, which is I think about 6 liters more than this bike, so your range improves, also is about 4 kgs lighter. So that's significant advantages over this bike. But then every generation is going to get new features, etc. So not that I'm feeling FOMO or anything like that, but if you have only one bike, sometimes these things do matter a lot. But what's also interesting, I mean, the tubeless wheels, tubeless tires are very tempting, because if you ever get a puncture, it's very difficult on the Africa Twin currently because of the tube tires. You have to take the tire out, etc. And so tubeless wheels really make a big difference. Tubeless wheels make a big difference, and that's something that I definitely wanted to have, and want to have. So I'm considering the Africa Twin Adventure Sports, upgrading the bike. And what's more is that they have a manual version in India now. So it's a manual version. It's about 4 kgs lighter. It's got tubeless wheels. It's got more power. It's got a bright new color scheme. It has a lot of things going for it. So that's really why I am considering the Africa Twin Adventure Sports. In the meanwhile, they've already announced the Tiger 900, which is going to be launched also in June. And the Tiger 900 is a significant improvement over the 800. They fixed a lot of problems. One of the problems was I was talking about the lack of bottom end punch, which during off-roading meant your wheel would spin up, etc. Not that I've tried that, but apparently it is an issue. And so they've got a lot of grunt. They've changed the engine. It's a 900 compared to an 800, a 888 to be exact. And so a 888 engine, bigger, more powerful. I don't think it's much more powerful actually. So all of the, I guess the increase in the engine size has gone to making more torque at the bottom end. And at the top end, it's like a regular triple. So a triple engine obviously has got different characteristics, and it can spin up more easily and kind of be more fun at the top end. So they've got that, and plus they also have lean sensitive traction control and ABS now. And what else? What else does the Tiger? Well, the Tiger was always a great machine. But the one negative thing about the Tiger, they say now, is that it has a little bit of vibration at higher RPMs, which was the Tiger's strength. It never had any vibes. I've asked a couple of people who rode it, and they're saying it's no worse than any adventure bike. But we will just have to see. Ride the Tiger, ride the Africa Twin Adventure Sports, and then make a decision about which of these bikes one wants to upgrade to. So that's the plan currently. So cop car. Okay, I do think my rear tire doesn't have as much tire pressure as it should. I think that is definitely the case. Feels a little bit skittish or something, like it's moving around. Well, let me take it to a petrol pump and try and fill air. So that's that. So the Tiger has a few advantages. It's got a triple engine, better at the high end, and it's got grunt at the bottom end now. It's much lighter. That's the other thing. So Triumph doesn't give wet weights, but apparently the dry weight is 201 kgs or something like that. So wet weight will be around 220. And the new Africa Twin Adventure Sports is 238. But you have to keep in mind that it has a 24-liter tank. So if you remove 6 liters or 6 kg approximately, that makes it 232 as opposed to 220. Still 12 kgs heavier. But the new Africa Twin throttle sound is just amazing. So is the Tigers. So it's a very close contest. I guess one will have to see the pricing as well, because the Adventure Sports is not a cheap bike. It's 15.35 x showroom. I don't know what will that translate into on the road in Bombay. But it's also about the fact that I've had the Africa Twin. I mean, I have the Africa Twin right now, and maybe I just want to try something different. But also the new Africa Twin, because one gets a certain sense of, I guess, loyalty to a brand, or maybe not loyalty, but an understanding of the brand, and you kind of enjoy it. So I'm kind of torn between the two. Even before they've landed on both of them have landed up on our shores, and before I've tried them out. But I think I'm going to try it out when it comes in, and then take a quick call. Because one thing I do know is that I would like I would like a manual bike now. And so that's the reason, really. The other bike that's in the mix, not as an alternative to these two, obviously, is the Duke 390 Adventure. Not Duke, but the KTM 390 Adventure. And that's also an interesting bike because it's really, I mean, it's marketed as an adventure bike, but I think it's more of a sports bike that can be used on Indian roads. And that's why it has a 19-inch front. It has high ground clearance relatively. And so that's what's going on in the motorcycling world. This camera has been a bit of a disaster because it keeps moving back. Let me see if we move it forward and then tilt it back, but no, I don't think it's working. Whoa. Okay. So okay, so this has been a bit of a disaster, but we'll see if we can rescue some footage from it. Also, motovlogging is a lonely job, I just realized, because I started mumbling back there because there's nobody really I'm talking to and there's no camera pointed at you really, so you're not even conscious. You have to realize that the audio is going to be doing the talking for you later on over the video, and stay focused. I should turn back around here somewhere. I think I'll be hitting the Mumbai border or whatever it might be. There's that pass or something. Actually, let me just go past this flyover and I'll turn on the next one. Oh, there's the gate. I have to turn. I should just turn here. Alright, honeys. One of you let me go past. Somebody's coming in a bit slower. Alright, thank you. Here we go. So if you see that U-turn's not really difficult if you follow the technique. Making U-turns on a heavy bike is actually fairly easy. The important lesson in motorcycling really is don't try and fight the bike. The bike will do its thing. Don't try and control it from the handlebars or whatever. Look, man, no hands. Bike will balance itself. You don't have to worry. It's like riding a horse, I guess. You just kind of hang on with your knees and use your body position to balance the bike, because the centrifugal forces or centripetal forces, I don't know which one, which is kind of helping the bike center itself and go straight. And turning is about really steering the handlebars with gentle pulls and pushes to counter steer. You can look all that up on YouTube if you're interested. But if you're watching this video, I assume you already know all that stuff. Actually, that's an assumption I should not make. Maybe you don't. Maybe you do. Alright, that's what you call a helping foot. If you can't give a helping hand, give a helping foot. Helping foot. Overcast day, monsoon about to arrive. I guess one of the last rides before the monsoon hits. But it's not like you stop riding during the monsoon. As I learned last season, it can be an interesting time to ride. So this is what I mean. When I'm in fourth gear and I'm kind of revving the bike, it's difficult, or it's not that pleasurable or easy. Actually, I don't know how to put it, but it's not. It kind of has an inertia about going past 5,000 RPM or 6,000. You feel like you're really stressing the engine out. Whereas with one of the triples or four-cylinder engines, they love to. Actually, it's not about the cylinders. So even the KTM 390 loves staying in the 6,000-8,000 band, and this baby is really happy in the, I guess, up to 6,000. That's fine. And already at 6,000 you're doing like crazy speeds, but it's a different feel. You've got a lot of grunt, a lot of torque. I'm also going relatively easy today because of the rear tire pressure that I've been talking about. I'm not really sure it's 100%, maybe off by 10% or 15-20% today, like maybe not as full as it should be. I'll check it on the way. It's a pretty amazing bike, all in all. Oh buddy, stay up straight. This guy's like leaning back. Wind can't handle the wind. So it's moving back, which I guess this thing might be too small for it, like too narrow. This pipe might be too narrow for it. Okay, so I'm going to go back and check if the audio is absolutely fine. But we have a way to go. So let me tell you about some other issues. I feel that everyone needs, and every motorcycle enthusiast needs 3 bikes in their garage at least. And for me, at least. And for me, those 3 bikes are one adventure bike, definitely, one street naked 4-cylinder bike, and I don't know, maybe a dirt bike. Although you can't really ride dirt bikes on streets, they're not street legal. So not a dirt bike then. Maybe like a sports touring bike, yeah. So you have something that's a sports touring bike, that's, if you're doing a long trip that's going to be mainly on the road, So maybe you can get like a, depending upon where you're going, maybe something like a Tiger 1200 even, or a GS. Well, actually GS is fairly hardcore adventure. So maybe like a V-Storm 1050, V-Storm 1000, or a Versus 1000, or maybe like a BMW S1000 XR or something like that. So if you get something like that, then you have an adventure bike like an Tiger or an Africa Twin. Actually an Africa Twin in that case then, for sure, because you get your higher revs kind of pleasure from your sports touring bike, so that makes sense. Africa Twin manual, a sports touring bike like the S1000 XR or the Versus 1000 or something like that, and a very sporty kind of street naked bike like a Street Triple RS, or maybe like a 4-cylinder, definitely. Maybe a CB1000R or a Z900, which is a bike I'd like very much. But those bikes you can't ride for very long, so you have to keep it for the city or for rides on great roads where you're going somewhere, or maybe like hilly terrain where you're taking corners and stuff like that on decent roads. And I'd just keep the 390 Adventure just as an addendum, so like a fourth bike, because one can, and if you're dreaming, why not? So this is why this bike is so fantastic on long journeys and over really bad roads and stuff. Actually, for journeys, the Africa Twin is superb because it's very comfortable. You don't have to worry about changing gears, except maybe with your fingers if you like that whole feel of manual gears. And it's got a lot of power, a lot of grunt for overtaking. It's got a lot of torque. Very good for doing really bad roads or village roads and stuff that you come across in India so often when you're traveling, or maybe you're coming across a section that's really being repaired or something. The Africa Twin doesn't mind all those terrible roads. You just stand up on the foot pegs and zip past, and you can do long days comfortably. It's got a commanding position in traffic, as you can see. This is an XUV 500 next to me, and I'm sitting higher than the driver. Hey buddy, sitting higher than you. I wasn't very smart. Alright, now there's a full jam here, and this is supposed to be COVID time. They're repairing the road, but still, that's a fair amount of traffic. I think that man was asking me that he wanted to take a photograph of the bike, or with the bike. Could have obliged him actually, but it's rather hot today. So I don't want to be out in this humidity and heat for too long. But I was talking about how the Africa Twin is a phenomenal bike to tour, to go touring. Touring is this word that they have in the motorcycling community. Everybody talks about, hey, I'm going touring. And that means you put your baggage on the bike, some panniers, and head off for a long trip. And people go touring on all kinds of bikes. It doesn't have to be an adventure bike, but these bikes are simply comfortable for doing long hours of riding. Great on the highway because they have a lot of power and they can do a lot of miles very quickly, like right now. So actually, if you ride it well, you can keep the Africa Twin in the power band of between 4 and 6,000 RPM. It's a very rewarding bike to ride, despite having a lot of grunt down under and maybe not having the most rev happy engine like perhaps the Tiger 800 was known to be, is known to be. But still, it's a lot of fun if you keep it in the 4 to 6,000 band and switch gears manually. Comfortable, it's easy, it's fun to ride. Yes, it's got a big 21-inch wheel, and guess what, that's going to save your ass when you go over those big potholes or those unexpected stones or whatever it is on the road that you find. That's what's going to help you. So yes, it's not as nimble as a KTM 390, but that's not its job. It does everything pretty well. As a motorcycle, it's fairly nimble. It can get in and out of, you can filter traffic quite easily. In traffic it's great because it runs relatively cool, it doesn't direct heat in your direction, and the automatic gears just make it really simple to ride in traffic. Relatively, it's heavy but relatively well balanced. So that's the secret, is that keep it at 4,500-5,000 RPM. And at an intermediate stage, you'll love the riding, even long distance. I do feel at the top end I would have loved a little more power, but that's what the new bike apparently does. It has 10 more horsepower and it's a lighter bike. Apparently the chassis setup is slightly different, so it feels much lighter than its statistics would have you believe. By the way, cornering I went through this whole process about cornering, and so initially, if you come to motorcycles, you think cornering is all about leaning into the curve, like sports bikes, like you've seen the MotoGP guys do it. And there is a reason for that, because what you're doing is you're actually, by loading up the inside of the motorcycle, you are actually reducing the lean angle of the actual motorcycle itself. That's apparently the theory. But then, for adventure bikes, I went to a workshop run by Vijay Parmar and my friend Shane, and I learned there that there's another way to corner or take a corner, and that is that you counterbalance. And what that does is, and that's usually used for off-road, but it can be useful on the street as well. There's a Bugatti up front, I think, and so that cornering method is to do with the counterbalancing, and therefore apparently you put your weight on the inside of the tire so it gets more traction in low traction environments. Alright buddy, that's a beautiful car. It's a McLaren. Mercedes, I don't know, it's a Dubai number plate. McLaren Mercedes or something like that. AMD. Okay, this camera has almost given up. And so I found that cornering, like the adventure bike style, actually is really inspires a lot of confidence. And if you do it on the streets as well, apart from really doing super sport kind of cornering on curves, which anyway is not recommended in our country because of various reasons, visibility, safety, etc. The fact that you can suddenly have loose gravel, it's not a predictable environment that you're riding in. So this other style is much safer, so I'll demonstrate right now. So there you go, and I'm actually counterbalancing and putting my weight on the opposite side of the lean of the bike. And so that what that does is the outside of the tire gets weighted up and there's more traction, more rubber on the ground apparently. And that's another way to turn, and your body position is changing all the time. So look at this. This is what's been happening. So here we go off. So that's quite interesting. So I found that turning like that can actually be a lot of fun. Well, here we're back. I'm not really sure what you're going to hear because it was pretty windy and noisy inside the helmet. I'm sure the mic has been catching that. So I'm not sure I'll be able to use that audio. So let me sum up very quickly what I said while we're on the inside lanes of Bandra, where I'm going at reasonable speeds. The wind is not blowing through my helmet. Let me tell you what we were talking about. One, this poor camera, well, maybe it'll hold up now because we're not going at that high speed. There you go, stand up and take the speed breaker on your foot pegs and turn. Alright, so hopefully this camera will give us some usable footage. And I was talking about how I chose the Africa Twin over the Tiger in 2018. The Tiger is a fantastic bike as well, the Tiger 800. I had actually booked it, and all the people at Triumph, by the way, in Bombay, really good. Showroom is really good, but the salespeople, I must say, are fantastic. They're really friendly. They've given me test rides of literally so many bikes and never complained about me not actually buying any one of them. But so they're really great guys, and they've almost become like friends. Of course, it frustrates them that I don't become a customer, but I had booked the Tiger and then I cancelled it because the Africa Twin had come along. I took a test ride, and I must say I fell in for a little bit of the higher cc, high power torque bike with this very grunty kind of engine, and you know, the off-roading chops and stuff like that. I mean, you don't really use the bike off-road a lot, but it's pretty good for bad roads. But the Tiger would have done that. But a couple of things that swung it for me actually were the fact that the Tiger had a lot of heat, and in India that was a prime issue, and this bike, it manages its heat really well. The second thing was it was a DCT, so better value, and I was interested in trying out a DCT because the clutch used to give me a lot of trouble on the Versus. It was relatively, I mean, it wasn't exactly unmanageable, but it was a little bit uncomfortable, especially if you're dealing with India's heat and sweat and bad traffic and stuff like that. If you to keep using the clutch, your left hand would go sore. So the DCT was a good option. Also, it has a Tiptronic function, so you can actually decide when to change gear, just like a Tiptronic function in a automatic car. You don't have to depend on only the automatic system of the motorcycle itself, so that actually makes it fairly enjoyable, apart from the fact that you cannot slip the clutch and use it in certain situations, or that you don't have a neutral gear. When you're riding, sometimes I like to temporarily have the bike in neutral as I press the clutch and then rev match, and it's just a different way of riding. So I've not experienced, I kind of miss that, I think, because when I used to ride the Duke 390, I used to enjoy that part of riding. It feels, the feel's different. But this is great. This kind of feature is great off-road because a lot of people stall their bikes because they can't coordinate the clutch, etc. on off-road terrain, and this bike will not stall, and that makes it quite amazing for newbies who are trying to off-road even, although it's a fairly heavy bike and I wouldn't recommend off-roading on really technical trails unless you know what you're doing. But you know, it can handle village roads and really bad roads, and some coffee estate trails that I've done, it's a hoot. You put it in the right mode and you can actually gun the accelerator, and the DCT really helps there until you become an intermediate rider where people say they want the clutch to do all kinds of things. But even there, the Africa Twin is a fairly well regarded bike as an off-road vehicle. So having an adventure bike that's off-road capable is really useful in India, not for off-roading but really handling India. Okay, I've got to find some fruit. I was planning to buy some fruit. So that's why I got the Africa Twin. But now 2 years on, the Tiger 900 is arriving, and I'm taking a look at that because it's apparently fixed a lot of problems, including the heat. It's lighter than the Africa Twin. That was the trade-off. The Africa Twin was heavier than the Tiger, but it was fairly well balanced. So apparently they fixed all of that in the Tiger 900. The engine is lower, further set forward. Suspension is great. Everyone's been giving it great reviews and saying amazing things about the Tiger. So we're going to see what happens once the Tigers here available for test ride. Because it's a triple engine, it has a different character, and the only thing I know is that I want to upgrade to or change my bike or get another bike which is a manual bike, not just DCT. So that's the idea. Okay, fruit. Let's go to farmer's store and see if they have fruit. Mirchi kelas. Well, this guy has mirchi kelas.